Yo, what's up, everybody? It's a beautiful day out here in Texas, so I figured what better place to record this than the outdoors. So enjoy the change of scenery. I'm sure you're admiring my newest fashion statement, and I'm sure all of you are jealous. But I just want to come on here and give some context as to why I'm wearing this, what happened, and what my plans are going forward to deal with this. Now, I wish I had some cool story where I like stopped to train and saved a family of five. But basically, what happened was I was playing around with some calisthenics movements, and I essentially was swinging from a monkey bar to a monkey bar. And when my left arm got behind me, it completely dislocated and ended up tearing up a few things in there. The labrum was pretty damaged, and the long head of the bicep runs through what they call a bicipital groove up here, and that had torn through the ligament that holds the bicep in that bicipital groove, and the supraspinatus, so the front of the rotator cuff, was also torn in the process. But luckily, they were able to repair it, and so now I'm left to kind of piece together what I can and can't do in the gym. Now, I realize this is not the most optimal thing to have happen at the start of a channel that is about lifting weights. So I was down, man. I was down in the dumps for a little bit, but I realized that injury is actually, unfortunately, normally a portion of a lifter's journey. And as I was looking online, I realized there wasn't many videos out there about training in a sling and training through a surgery recovery process like this. So I'm hoping I can provide some valuable insight into how I'm structuring my lifting routine, how I'm going to be staying active throughout this recovery process, and hopefully I can help somebody out there who is going through something similar get through the mental aspect of it and understand that this is not the end of the world. This is just a brief moment. It's a drop in a bucket, and you'll get through it very quickly. And as a matter of fact, you'll probably learn something about yourself in the process. Maybe you're someone watching this who has had no injury history and is not currently working around an injury. I still believe you'll gain some insight from the program that I'm going to share that I've written for myself, and hopefully you can learn a few things about programming variables, fatigue, just setting up a lifting program in general, and glean some insight as to how and why I set up my lifting routine the way I do. So, with all that said, let's get into looking at this 75% growth program. All right, what is up, everybody? Welcome back. It is a new day, as you can tell. The boys got a fresh cut on. It's getting hot here in Texas, so I was feeling mullet vibes. I guess you could say it was the heat of the moment. And also, another fashion statement that I discarded, you can see that my left arm is now fully exposed to show off all of its atrophy. But at home, when I'm seated like this, I get to take the luxury of letting my arm free hang, which is something I'll probably never take for granted again. It's definitely made me appreciate just being able to move a lot more. But enough about my hair. Let's get into how I'm growing the 75% of my body that I can right now. And that's exactly what I named this block of training, growing the 75%. I believe I'm going to make this a little series, and I'm going to take you through my program that I've set up during this time. After we go through the ins and outs of what and why I'm doing what I'm doing, I plan on making a few videos where I take you through the workouts themselves, and I will show you videos of me actually performing the lifts, and we'll talk about the ups and downs and all the good things that come with training. So let's get into the program. Now, I have to preface this by speaking on a little bit of my training philosophy. For me, I love being in the gym, so I like to lift 6 days a week. I have a rest day on Tuesdays. It is the most hectic day at school. Labs and lectures, it's pretty brutal. So just for sake of convenience, on Tuesdays, I do not lift. But every other day of the week, I plan on being in the gym in some capacity. I found for me that I haven't experienced really any burnout yet. And I've been doing this for a year and a half of this style of 6 day a week training. That's just how I do things, and everyone is individual in that case. But it may seem a little odd because I only have 4 individual lifting days. And so what that means is throughout the 6 day period, I'm completing the same four workouts. And so every other week will be a different spread of workouts. It'll either be skewed towards A or B. And let's get into what A or B means. So coming up on day 1, it is upper A. And yes, I am still training my right side upper body. For me, it just makes sense to me. I would much rather have only a quarter of my body untrained than going to a full half of my body untrained. I don't think it's going to set me up for any injuries further down the line because of a muscle imbalance. I think that's largely overblown, and there's no actual literature to back that claim up. And when I go back to bilateral movements, this left side is going to be the weaker side. It's going to be getting the majority of the stimulus out of those movements. And so I don't see a long-term imbalance really being an issue. So I'm going to keep doing curls on my right side, basically. But upper A. So I'm going to contradict myself a little bit. I said I love being in the gym, but I really don't. Like, the actual amount of time I'm in the gym, I want it to be very succinct, and I like to get things done. So for me, that looks like a lot of superset training. And so that's what these varying color shades of blue and orange are. Each color shade represents a superset that will be performed back to back with minimal rest. And that's just because I don't like to sit around and wait. I guess you could say it might be a little ADHD. I just can't sit there and do nothing. So this is how I do things. It allows me to get in a ton of volume. Workouts are super fun for me this way, and pretty quick, really, when you look at all the sets and exercises performed. So I start off upper A with a single arm incline dumbbell bench press. Now, pressing has been the hardest part of upper body training, just because the stabilization is very weird when you don't have a counterweight on your other side to hold this weight from pulling your body, basically doing a side twist on a bench. But I found that the incline dumbbell press I can handle pretty well. And that's as low of an incline as the benches at my gym go to. So it's fairly flat. But I found that just that little bit of incline gets enough traction where I can put it in the seat and takes enough load off of what I'm able to press to where it's stable enough where I feel like I'm getting a good stimulus out of it. And I superset that with a hammer strength single arm machine pull down. I like to take advantage of these machines when I can. It happens to be in my gym. This is right by where the incline benches are. So I will just hop off of the incline bench after I throw the weight down and hop over on this hammer strength machine. I do think machines are valuable for their stability, especially like I said in this case where stability is kind of difficult with only one side being loaded. And so I like to take advantage of the opportunities I have to use some of these machines in the gym. After that, I'll follow that up with a hoist machine press. Now, this is a specific brand that actually moves with your body as you press the weight. So your body weight is actually a portion of the load of the machine. Super cool machine. I just like using it because no one's ever on it. And it's like an old person machine in our gym, but I love it. It feels great. And that's how I'm doing my flat pressing there. And then I'll go to a cable crossbody diagonal pull. So this just allows me a little bit more freedom at the arm. and I can really get a good lat stretch. It's a little more horizontal pull than the single arm machine pull down, so I kind of get the vertical pull and the horizontal pull checked off that day. After that, I'll follow that up with some incline lateral raises. This is a really great movement. I do that leaning on a bench, on an incline bench, and basically just doing kind of like lengthened partials. So it changes the resistance curve of the movement to make it hardest where that delt is in its lengthened position. And I found that I get a ton out of that movement. And I will also superset that with neck flexion on the same incline bench. I like to do that on an incline because what I found is if you do neck flexion on a flat bench, the movement is hardest at the top. So when your neck muscles are shortened, and there's basically no resistance at the bottom when your head is fully flexed back because the lever arm's gone, right? The moment arm from your skull to your neck joint right here goes to zero. And so the incline changes that resistance curve, much like we talked about the incline lateral raise, to make it a more lengthened biased neck movement for these neck flexors up here. All right, so that was upper A. Now let's move on to lower A. I am super thankful that one of the gyms I go to has an SSB or a safety squat bar. So if you don't know what that is, I'll put a picture up for you. But basically your hands can hold the bar in front of you. And so the SSB has handles that come down in the front of your body, and it allows you to grip the bar with a much more neutral position and not having to go into extreme external rotation to hold onto the barbell. And that's great for me because I can basically do zero external rotation right now on my left side. But the only issue is I have to find someone, oftentimes several people, to help me set up the rack and put the bar on the rack. But I've never had an issue with that so far, and everyone in the gym has been super supportive, and it's been great. The SSB has been super useful because without it, I would do zero hinging. I'm doing no free weight rows, so my spinal erectors would be just withering away. I'm doing no hinging patterns, no deadlifting, nothing of that sort. And I don't have access to a back extension machine, so the SSB good mornings are really saving my posterior chain and my spinal erectors, and I've been loving that movement. I superset that with some arm work on my right side, a single arm hammer curl. It's free real estate basically, and like I said, who doesn't like leaving the gym with an arm pump? Who cares if it's a lower day? And then after that, I will go on to a squat pattern. So I have 1.5s hack squats here, or 1.5 hack squats. And this is basically an integrated partial set. So I will go down, come back up, go down, come back up halfway, and then repeat that process. So every other rep is a lengthened partial where I'm not completing the lockout, and that just skews the movement more towards a lengthened bias, which it already is. Also, it allows me to take some load off of what I normally lift, and so that's been great because the pads of the hack squat sit right above my shoulders, and I found that loading above the shoulder really gives it issues right now. So if I can take a little bit of weight off and get the same amount of stimulus out of it, that is a-okay with me. And I will superset that with a hammer strength machine tricep extension. This one is basically just plug in the plate and go. I like it because there's no dinking. I don't have to adjust any cable racks. I don't have to move any dumbbells around. I can just hop over straight from the hack squat, take a nice slow walk, catching my breath, and knock out some tricep extensions on my right side. Next up, after that superset is done, I start off with a lying hamstring curl for superset 3. And I like this movement because we've already covered our hinging earlier on with the SSB good morning. And the lying hamstring curl really gets the hamstrings in more of a shortened position. So you're not so hinged at the hip. And that seems to be good for like the sartorius and the gracilis muscles in your leg, the knee flexors that don't cross the hip and the knee. So basically, they are preferentially recruited in that movement. So I'm getting a little more holistic hamstring growth there. And I'll superset that with the hammer strength abductor machine. It's right next to the lying hamstring curl. And why not? I think abductors are extremely underrated. If you're lean, they give your the top of your glute a really cool look. And it's something that I can just throw in a few sets during the week just to know I'm checking my boxes. And I think theoretically they might help with some injury prevention. So I'll plug those in, and like I said, it's free volume while I'm resting from the hamstring curls. After that, I'll do some ab work. The reason why I don't really have an exercise nailed down here is because I haven't found one. Decline crunches don't feel good with the sling on. They don't feel good normally for me without anything. Doing them before, I never liked them. I've been playing around with the GHD sit-up. So that's basically doing a sit-up on a glute ham device. You're kind of setting up in the machine backwards. And that's okay. I think I'll probably stick with that one for a while. It's tough enough, just body weight, and even holding a 10-pound plate at my chest is plenty of loading. So that's not a problem right now, even with one arm. But my one thing is I do feel like it's more hip flexors than abdominals. And this is ab work after all, so I kind of have to watch that. But I mean, beggars can't be choosers, especially right now. So I'm going to train my abs how I can, and that's probably how I'm going to do it. And I will superset that with a Nordic leg extension. Now, this is essentially leg extension on full length and partial mode. So you really are lengthened at the hips. You get your knees all the way out in front of you, and you're basically doing a leg extension on the ground. And you get the rectus femoris, that little triangle in the middle of your quads. It crosses the hip and the knee, so it's only maximally lengthened when your hips are basically fully extended and your knee is flexing. So that's what this leg extension version is preferentially targeting. And after the hack squats and these leg extensions, dude, like walking is very hard. Okay, moving on to the third day of my 4-day lifting rotation. It is upper B. Upper B starts off with a flat pressing variation, a hammer strength machine chest press. Again, I can only flat press on machines, and even then not too well. So this is going to be in the higher rep range, just so I can take some loading off and make the movement a little more stable to where I'm not torquing in the seat. And I'll superset that with a single arm cable row. This is a low row, so it's very horizontal, and the way I set it up, it's almost vertical. When I take you through that exercise, that lifting day, I'll walk you through that movement and I'll show you how I set it up. But this is basically a very low horizontal row. So starting off the day with a flat press and a flat row. Then after that superset, I will go to a cable press round, kind of popularized by Coach Kasim at N1. I basically just set that up at a little above chest height on a cable machine, and I can go and do like a decline sort of press. It's tough, it's a balancing act, but it gets the job done. I get a super deep stretch at the bottom, so it's a great movement for that. And then I'll superset that with a single arm lat pull down. Again, I'm already at the cable station and it's right there. So while I'm resting from the press around, I'll hop over there. I do a lat pull down with a little bit of twist. I found that just helps stretch out the lats. It feels good for me personally. And I'll go ahead and knock out 4 sets of those. After that, we go on to a single arm machine preacher curl and a single arm overhead tricep extension. So a brief arm superset to close off the 2 pressing and 2 pulling variations right there. And the single arm machine preacher curl, I will do several drop sets on at the end. And the overhead tricep extension gets the long head of the tricep in the lengthened position. So it kind of preferentially recruits the long head in that area. And for me, that's really important right now because I'm not doing any pullovers or anything really for the long head besides this overhead movement. So that's getting more of the holistic tricep growth taken care of, and a nice complement to the hammer strength tricep extension that we did earlier in the week on lower A. All right, After that, we go on to some lateral delt work. So cable cuff lateral raises. And I found that I put the cable at hand height at the bottom. So the movement has peak tension when the delt is in its most lengthened position. And I like doing these with cuffs because they just feel good. My wrists hurt if I do them with the handles. And I'm not one of those guys that holds the handle and puts a cuff on like you see sometimes on Instagram, Snapchat, and YouTube. But I just grip my fist really tight and I put a cuff on right above my watch right here, and I can knock out some of those. Those are like Oonga Boonga movements. Like you can just go spam those basically. And I'll superset that with leg press calf raises because unfortunately the human body has calves and I'm gonna train them. All right. The fourth and final day of this lifting rotation is lower B, and it is more of a posterior chain dominant day, I would say. We start off the day with a Nautilus hip thrust. So this machine has been great for me, especially not being able to do any deadlift variations right now. My glute gains, I feel like, were going down the drain. But this hip thrust machine has allowed me to load something pretty heavily and still get a lot out of the movement. I'm not too sold on it because it is hardest in the short position, which is why I start out the session like this, because typically you can diminish your strength in the short position and you maintain your strength in the lengthened position. So we can go ahead and check off that lengthened position box later in the movement. Also, the hip thrust can be done in a high rep range because there's no stability required, and because it's a shortened bias movement, it basically gets a pretty good pump going in the area. So I found that getting the glutes warm before going into a lengthened movement is kind of like what John Meadows used to prescribe, where he would do a lot of pump work and then go into deep stretch work. I think there is something to that. And so I include both shorten and lengthen work on this day. I'll superset that movement with a tricep extension. This is just a basic cable push down. I like to train my triceps. I think they look cool, and they are the bigger portion of the arm, so I give them a little more volume than my biceps in this case. After that superset, I'll go on to a single leg press, and this is a very hip dominant movement. So my foot is high up on the leg press platform, and it's also near the midline of my body. So that allows me to get a super deep stretch on my glute at the bottom position. Not so much quad involvement. There's not a lot of knee flexion going on, but a lot of hip movement, and that gets a super deep stretch. It's basically like replacing what Bulgarian split squats did for me before this injury. And I'll superset that with a dumbbell hammer curl because I like the way it feels and think they look cool. And it's right there. I can just bring over the dumbbell to the leg press machine and set it down and not have to worry about getting in anybody's way or walking too far to a machine to do some curls. So I knock out some hammer curls there, doing more so for the forearm. And one thing I don't have listed in a lot of these days is I will optionally do forearm work at the end of any given session. Because for me, it's something that it's not a huge priority, but I do realize that they do have some aesthetic value. And so normally I will end up about 2 to 3 days a week training some forearm movement. And I will just fit that in wherever I can. If I'm feeling really good on a day, I'll fit in, forearms, neck, and abs all at the end of a session. Some days where I feel like I need to pull back and take a little bit of a rest, good luck if you see me doing some forearm curls. It's probably not going to happen. All right, so after that superset, we move on to a single leg extension and a seated hamstring curl. So I like doing the single leg extension, just kind of sticking with the unilateral movements for the day. We've already covered the Nordic leg extension done earlier in the week, where it's a super lengthened bias movement. The single leg extension is a little more short biased. I do that for the higher rep range and more of like, I hate to use the term pump exercise because all of these are taken to failure. oftentimes beyond lengthened partials at the end of every set, just because I don't find that it takes away from my recoverability later on in the week or my performance across the session. So I will knock those out and spam those pretty hard. Supersetting that with a seated hamstring curl. Earlier in the week, we hit the lying hamstring curl, having the hamstrings in a more shortened position. So this is basically just training the hamstrings through knee flexion in a lengthened position. And again, partials at the end of basically every set for those, and really going ham on the hamstring curls there. And the final superset of the day for lower B is the hammer strength adductor machine. I think the adductors are an extremely slept on muscle group. They are basically like having a fifth quad, and you can tell that if someone has huge adductors, their legs stand out. So I like to throw in some adductor work. They do get trained through deep squatting movements and some hip hinges, but I think some direct work during the week is really beneficial. And again, because I'm on a 4-day split with a 6-day training week, every other week I will do the adductor machine twice in the week. So fairly good frequency for direct adductor work there. And I will also include ab work and neck flexion in that superset just to cap off that day and go about the rest of the training week. All right, everybody, so that is all 4 training days taken care of. That is how I'm growing the 75% of my body that I can right now. I will say that at the end of every session, I throw in some blood flow restriction training on my left side. So I can't move at the shoulder, but I can still do curls and extensions with limited weight. So I do BFR at the end of every single session, just 3 sets of curls and extensions. I'm not tracking those. It's not so much for progress, just more so for rehab and just keeping the movement going on that side. So that is it for the first installment of growing the 75%. I hope y'all have learned something from this, learning how I program. I will be taking you through every training day and some upcoming training logs that will be a continuation of the Growing the 75% series. I hope that if you're going through something similar, that you learned something from kind of how I structured things. And I think it'll be more clear once I get some lifting footage out there for y'all. But my one thing is that just keep going, guys. If one thing I've realized is that it seems a lot worse in the moment, but when I step back and look at things, I'm still lifting and training hard 6 days out of the week. Like, that is a huge win for me. And so just appreciating that has been a huge mindset shift. So I'm still pumped to train when I get the opportunity to, even if I know that I'm leaving some muscle groups behind. It's just a short-term moment, and later on down the line, it'll catch up and I'll look back on this and laugh, because at the end of the day, like 2 months off of lifting, 8 weeks, it's really not that long. So I will see you in the next installment of the Growing the 75% series, where I will be taking you through upper A. I want to thank you guys so much for watching if you made it this far, and I will see you in that next video. Remember, stay jacked.